One of my favorite things about Magic is discovering cards in the archives of sets past that offer even more things to love about the best game ever made. Originally printed in Exodus in July of 1998 and reappearing recently in 2016's Eldritch Moon, today's subject is one such card. Peace of Mind is an enchantment that allows its controller to exchange mana and cards for life. It is by all popular metrics a bad Magic card. And it's also one of my favorites, and I want to talk about why. Just to clarify, I'm using bad here in the colloquial sense as a stand-in for low power or just something I don't like. I'm not going to convince you that Peace of Mind is going to revolutionize Eternal formats, nor that you should even necessarily play the card at all. I'm considering Peace of Mind and all other cards mentioned in this video as single pieces of game design that can succeed or fail on a variety of axes, not just power. With that out of the way, Peace of Mind is a 2-mana white enchantment that has the activated ability, white, discard a card, you gain 3 life. That's it. The first thing I love about Peace of Mind is that it succeeds at teaching a valuable lesson about the value of Magic's resources just by playing the card. Many new players think of life as the score of the game and therefore the most important resource, and the ability to gain roughly 1/7 of your starting total certainly seems appealing. So, following that train of thought, they plunge the remaining cards in their hand away and watch as slowly but surely the peace of mind they once had about their high number fades, as they're unable to meaningfully impact the board due to a crippling case of no cards disease. From there, the opponent's creatures go unblocked and their combos go undisrupted, and you can extrapolate the rest. The initial lesson here of Peace of Mind is that trading mana and cards for life is a bad deal, that life gain in isolation of deliberate synergies is rarely an effective strategy. While Peace of Mind can only gain 3 life at the cost of an entire card, one single creature could match or outpace that life gain with no extra investment beyond its initial casting cost. Later on in the career of our fictional Magic player, they discover the Madness mechanic, and all the other cards that benefit from being able to pitch cards on demand, and their perception of Peace of Mind is turned on its head. Now, that 3 life is attached to whatever novel way they can use the cost of discarding a card. It's now an added feature instead of the card's main function. Perhaps that life gain will allow them to race when they otherwise couldn't, or save them from a game-ending swing later down the line. And boom, they have just gotten a second lesson about the power of incidental life gain. I sort of conceptualize this shift in perspective as mirroring the evolution of set design philosophy that led to the reprinting of Peace of Mind. Exodus, the first appearance of Peace of Mind, didn't really have a dedicated strategy that could use the card beyond simply gaining life. Mechanics like Flashback and Madness wouldn't be introduced until the Odyssey block nearly 3 years later. This is in contrast to its reprint 18 years later in Eldritch Moon, which had Madness and Delirium, 2 entire mechanics that justified Peace of Mind's inclusion. Speaking of, I also think Peace of Mind is an example of a perfect reprint. Outside of staples or cards that have accumulated a high price in the secondary market, weird old cards like Peace of Mind rarely touch modern sets. It's only when a card could fit the mechanics and flavor of a new set that they see the light of day again. This is frankly one of my favorite things to see in new sets. It rejuvenates older designs not by changing what the card actually does, but by creatively making a new environment where it can thrive. Shout out to Grinning Ingus's reprint in Strixhaven. That's another home run of a reprint. One of the hallmarks of a successful reprint, in my opinion, is the reinterpretation of a card's flavor. Thoughtseize from Theros is probably the most widely known example of this. The card was absolutely reprinted due to its cost and high presence in Eternal formats, but the art and flavor text were masterfully changed to fit in with the world building of Theros. The aforementioned synergies within Eldritch Moon that allowed for Peace of Mind's reprint are complemented by an excellent reinterpretation of the card's flavor. The previous 2 printings feature art from Randy Elliott of a Rothi core performing an unspecified ritual, and the flavor text from the Exodus version contains a description of the 3 paths of the soul, a bit of world building about the core's culture, and perhaps also a reference to the card's effect. Peace of Mind's 8th edition reprint cleverly uses the name of the card as the answer to the riddle in its flavor text. What can a peasant get for free that an emperor can never buy? In Eldritch Moon, the flavor of the card is reimagined with some gorgeous art by Christopher Muller. The indicators of this subject's insanity, the dilapidated house, and the spilled tea, eerily contrast her delighted expression, as well as the composition's soothing colors and gentle brushstrokes. It creates a subtle horror that's melancholic, but at the same time, a little sweet. It's also a unique piece of world building in a set that I felt was starved for it. I also read the flavor text of this version as an allegory for that first lesson Peace of Mind taught. There's definitely a comfort, no matter how insane, in withdrawing from the fights for board presence and simply watching your number go up, especially when learning a game as daunting as this one. Beyond that though, I think this reprint of Peace of Mind speaks to the versatility of Magic's design language. The same card can represent totally different ideas and even provide novel gameplay based on where and when it appeared. Finally, I want to bring this discussion a step further beyond the set level and out to the color Peace of Mind belongs to. Right off the bat, white having access to explicit discard outlets is rare, even by today's standards. It was actually even rarer when Peace of Mind was printed. It was the second white card ever that let its controller discard cards. The first was Pegasus Refuge from Tempest, only 2 sets prior. I think white is perceived as the least popular color partly because it isn't as easy to justify new and interesting mechanics for it. Certainly not as easy as it is for green, where because nature kinda lets it get away with anything. It's not so much that I believe white has had an ongoing identity crisis from the inception of the game, but rather that the mechanics each color was first tied to on a flavor level did not have equally valuable uses on a gameplay level, and this history dictated the way that the colors would evolve over time. So I find it funny that Peace of Mind's activated ability can essentially make each card in your hand a healing salve. By far the weakest card in the game's most iconic cycle, and shows the chasm in power level between the colors back in 1993. Each color was, and still sort of is, defined by how they manipulate the game's resources, and unfortunately, white started out with life gain. But even back in Alpha, white's ability to generate life was used in other ways. Swords to Plowshares, for example, still regarded as the game's strongest removal spell that forces your opponent to make a similar bad trade to Peace of Mind. Cards, and the mana spent to cast them, for life. Every color has a unique way of manipulating resources, and white has historically been at its strongest when it either stops opponents from doing just that, or by forcing them to make bad deals on demand. Due to this, white has adopted an additional identity as the fun police that's only grown stronger over time. Having access to the most efficient removal and resource denial will do that. And importantly, this does fit with white's flavor identity as the color representing ideas like justice and equality. Just for fun, here's my reimagining of Peace of Mind that forces its exchange on your opponent. I am aware that this card is a nightmare and ironically pairs best with the color it's meant to hose, but we gotta get revenge for Ancestral Recall somehow. Given white's sub-theme of forced bad deals, it's rare that white gets an enabler for a strategy it explicitly suppresses. As best as I can recall, the white X discard and graveyard strategies are mostly supported only in limited, and rarely is white not playing its usual role of support color even there. The archetypes and Ultimate Masters that had both payoffs and enablers in white are a successful version of this in my opinion. My favorite way that white resource manipulation has evolved over the years is the growing prevalence of opponents as resource cards. These are usually designed for and appear in commander sets, and they allow the player to get extra resources with the catch that they require the opponents to have met some condition or already possess more of that resource than they do. Black as a color can pretty much do anything, but often at the exuberant cost of some other resource. White being able to similarly do a lot of things, but at the cost of their opponents doing so as well, is I think a neat way to bring that idea across the color pie. I still think there's so much room for white to explore the manipulation of its own resources besides life gain. Although certainly not the only card to do so, Peace of Mind was one of the first that tried to push, however slightly, at what white could do. And in doing so, it created an odd relic from Magic's past that always leaves me with a little more to love each time I see it. I think it speaks volumes about the depth of this game that I felt compelled to make an entire video about a card with one line of text. I hope you take some time and think about why you love the cards you do too. And of course, thanks for watching.